think we have only 2 people at the moment. So if if you have any question, you can raise your hand and we can discuss as we go. So my name is Marta. I am originally from Italy, and I lived in different countries and relocated to Portugal a few years ago. So I'm part of what you could call an international family, because as I said, I'm from Italy, then my husband is from Germany, and we have 2 little girls that are born in Australia, and one is born here in Portugal. So obviously when we moved here, and as they approached the school age, we started investigating a lot about what were the school options in this country. And this is how I started, getting to know this field, which became then very useful for me in my job, because I work as a realtor, as a real estate agent, and I help a lot of families moving to Portugal. So obviously, naturally, I can also share this type of knowledge with them. So let me start by giving you an overview of what we're gonna talk about in this presentation. First of all, I'll talk in general about the Portuguese school system. I will then discuss what are the 3 main schooling options in Portugal. I will provide you with a list of the most known, best known international schools in the country. And I will also give you some resources that you can, research more information about them. I will also discuss what factors, in my opinion, are important to consider when choosing a school. And finally, I will briefly touch on a topic that I come across a lot in my job, which is what to prioritize, whether to choose a location based on a school or whether to, do the other way around, vice versa. So a little bit how to navigate that process. So let's start by looking at the Portuguese school system in general. In Portugal, education is compulsory until the first 9 years of education, what is called the basic education, and it's free. So you have free public schools. So school starts at age 6. Before that, you typically have 3 years of preschool or kindergarten. Then the basic education, the first 9 years, are divided into 3 cycles. So you have the primary school, which is the first cycle, which is 4 years. Then it's followed by a secondary cycle, another 2 years. And finally, you have 3 years of the third cycles. So that brings you to year 9. After year 9, you have another 3 years of, which is year 10, 11, and 12, which are the secondary education, which is, required if you want to access universities and higher education. So the school year, the academic year, starts in November and it runs until June. There's a big break in summer, which generally the 2 months of July and August are off. Then you have another couple of weeks of Christmas holiday, Christmas break. Then you have another week around Easter, and let's say then, the standard public holidays. But the bigger break is in summertime. This is obviously in the Portuguese system. The international schools are a different story. But if we're talking about Portuguese schools, this is how the calendar is generally organized. So when we look at schools in Portugal, you have, let's say, 3 broad options that you can choose from. There is the public system, then there is the Portuguese private system, and then you have the international school options. So let's look at them one by one. Looking at the public system, we have a system that, as I said, is free. The quality of the education in public schools varies a lot from place to place. So there are, certain public schools that have a very good reputation, but the trick here is that you can enroll only in schools that belong to your district. So for instance, I had clients that were planning to enroll their kids in public schools, and they were particularly keen on some public schools in Lisbon. And so then the residents, the choice of where to look for accommodation was based on being part of a certain district. So that's something to keep in mind if you are intending to send your kids to Portuguese school. the public ones, it makes sense to investigate the different location and the rankings of the schools. So then, generally speaking, we can say that the Portuguese public system has a very traditional way of teaching. So it's very much of a frontal learning with a lot of memorizing. And for sure, it follows the Portuguese curriculum. Now, looking at the private option. So in Portugal, there's a vast network of private schools. They are often faith-based. So there's a lot of Catholic schools. They generally have better facilities than the public counterparts, and they offered a lot more, let's say, extracurricular activities, better support services, because obviously it's a paid service. Looking at the fees, we have fees that range, let's say, between 300 and 700 per month per child. That's starting in primary school, and the fees then they increase as you go as you progress in the education. Finally, the third option is obviously the one of the international schools. It's becoming more and more widespread as a choice. So there's more and more options in Portugal for international schools, and they follow different curriculum. So we have some of the international schools that follow the British curriculum. You have some that follow the American, the US one. And then you have a lot that offer what is called the IB diploma, the International Baccalaureate diploma, which is a bit of a mix of both. And it's becoming more and more popular because it allows you to go to whatever university internationally. So it's a very common choice these days. So these international schools, for sure, they are as for the Portuguese private, they have very good facilities, generally speaking. They have more innovative ways of teaching, and they have a lot of extra activities, support services, and all of this. Now, in terms of fees, they tend to be higher than the Portuguese private schools. So we have fees that range, let's say, between 700 and 1,500 euros. That's in primary, and as I said, the same system. They go up, they increase as you go up in the education. So these ones are the three categories that you can group the schools in Portugal. Now, let's discuss a little bit what, in my opinion, are some of the factors that may help you navigate this choice of selecting a school for your child here. First of all, there is the financial factor, which obviously it's quite obvious that it creates a discrepancy among the different types of school. And this is a very relative topic, because it's interesting how for someone moving from the States, these fees for a good private school may seem quite reasonable. And then there's people who are moving, let's say, from Germany, where there's a very good public system, and they struggle to justify such an expense for primary school. So this is a very relative subject, but I find that it's one of the biggest decisional factors for people to exclude some options and decide which way to go. Then secondly, I think one of the most important things to consider is how long you plan to stay in the country. Because let's say you are moving from the US and you are planning to go back in a couple of years, it makes total sense to choose a school that follows a US national curriculum, so that you can actually easily slot back home when you go back home, slot back in school. So on the other hand, if you plan to stay all your educational here, for sure you can make a different choice. So how long you plan to stay in the country, I think, plays a crucial role for you to decide which way to go. And similarly with this one, I think the language factor plays a key role, because all the international schools, it's fair to say that the vast majority of them, they only study Portuguese as a second language. So the knowledge that you have of Portuguese at the end of your schooling is, let's say, not at a proficient level necessarily. So if you're planning to settle here and for your kids to be part of society, it could make sense to consider a more Portuguese version. On the other hand, speaking of the English level, it is fair to say that in Portugal, generally speaking, people speak a very good English. So your child, even if he's going to attend a Portuguese school, will end up with a very good level of English. But it is also fair to say that it will not be, let's say, a native level, because in the Portuguese system, you only have a few hours of English classes per week, which will allow you to become fluent in English, but not to develop the language in an academic, let's say, native level. So then I think another factor to consider is the social factor. So what community you'd like your kids, and then also yourself, because often when we move abroad, the parents of our kids' friends becomes our social circle too. So what community you'd like your family to be part of? Are you happy to stick to, let's say, the expat bubble, the international circle, or you'd rather mingle with the local community and having more of a, let's say, authentic experience in the country? So which one is more appealing to you? Because definitely the choice of the school will play a role in that too. I think also going more into a personal, direction, I think it's important to consider your child as an individual and also see what, in terms of personality and in terms of past experience, what you think, like how quickly you think you will adjust to a new school in a new country. Let's say your child is monolingual, he only speaks English, and he always lived his life in one place. So most likely it will be a little bit harder for him to adjust to a Portuguese school in comparison to a child who maybe speaks already 3 languages and moved country already in his life. So I think it always makes sense to consider a little bit more in details your situation and what is the background of your family and of your child. And similarly, it also plays a role, in my opinion, what area of Portugal you are considering moving to. Because let's say you are going to relocate to Lisbon, to the main city, where there's a lot of foreigners. I think you can consider that your child will have some peers, some other foreign children, if it goes even to a public school. On the other hand, maybe if you're considering a more remote location, sending your child to the local public schools will make him, it will be a little bit more isolated to start with. It will be a little bit more of an outsider, and then it will, that doesn't mean that it's not going to adjust, but it may be a little bit more difficult to fit in initially. So as well, the choice of the location where you're going to move to, I think, will play a role in deciding which way to go. And then, like I briefly mentioned before, if you are particularly keen on more innovative, more modern way of teaching, then maybe a private school, particularly an international one, could be a better fit for you, because they tend to have to work by project, to incorporate different subjects in the lessons, to work in a more cross-subject way than the traditional ways of teaching in Portugal. And similarly, if your child has some special needs, I think it's fair to say that it will be best attended in a private setting than in a public one, sorry. And finally, for sure, the commuting plays a role as well, because obviously, as much as there's quite a few international options, but there's not as many as the public schools. So there is a high likelihood for you to have to do some commuting if you're sending your child to an international school, unless you choose the accommodation accordingly, which is not a big deal. Of course, a lot of them have like school buses and so on, but it depends how keen you are for your child to spend a lot of time commuting per day at a young age. So that's something to consider as well. So if there's no questions or comments, I'm gonna keep going. let me give you now, the next few slides contain a list of international schools, starting from Lisbon. As you can see, all the schools are hyperlinked, so I don't know if Henry will send you the presentation, but you can click directly on the schools to access their website. So let's start from the first two. In Lisbon City, in Lisbon Center, we only have two international schools options at the moment, the British one and the United Lisbon. Then, as you can see in this slide and in the next one, there's quite a few options in the stretch between Lisbon and Cascais, which is like a coastal stretch, because it's it's very popular for foreign people to move to, I guess. And so in the last years, a lot of international schools have opened in this area. So as I said, in Lisbon, we have two. One covers the all, soon we'll cover the all educational path, the United one. The British school instead, it's only for the first and second cycle. For kindergarten and first cycle. Then we have the St. Julian School that is located in Carcavelos, which is also one of those intermediate locations between Lisbon and Cascais. And St. Julian's is one of the few international schools because it's a very historical private, international private school that offers a very good level of Portuguese. So this is one exception to what I was saying of schools that are internationals and that don't offer a lot of Portuguese in their teaching. St. Julian's is one exception. So if you value that, you should probably check that out. Then we have the Oeiras International Schools as well, very popular IB system. So you can see there's a column with the curriculum that they offer. They offer the IB diploma. Another one that is located very close to the Oeiras International one is the Sharing School that is becoming more and more popular. Then you have the Park. Park at the moment only is split between Cascais and Lisbon. So the primary, you can attend it in Cascais, and then after, I think, 4 years, you need to move to the Lisbon campus. Then we have few more options in Cascais, the IPS, which follows the British curriculum, and it's only a primary school at the moment, but soon they will increase it to secondary school too, and the St. Dominic's one in Cascais. Then we have three options towards Sintra. One is the Thesis. Thesis is a new school that only opened 2 years ago, and I know, I know a lot of people whose kids are attending the school there, and they seem to be very happy. It follows the Cambridge curriculum, and at the moment it only gets to 13 years of age, but I think they have a plan of increasing that too. And also there is the Carlucci American School, which is the one following the US. So that's the preferred option for people from the States because it follows the American curriculum and as well as a very good reputation, which is as well in the area of Sintra. And then we have Prime. Prime is a smaller school with two campuses in Sintra and in Estoril. Estoril is located close to Cascais as well. So these schools are all in the range around Lisbon. You don't necessarily live in Lisbon and go to school to Sintra. You could, but it's a bit of a commute. It's like roughly 45 minutes. But that's to say that there's a lot of options in this area. And recently, there's also a couple of options. You can see Palmela. Palmela is an area that, it's not very well known, but it's located in the region of Setúbal, south of Lisbon. And they opened these two international schools, which is significant because more and more people, more people coming from abroad are choosing to relocate south of Lisbon as well, not necessarily north like the area of Cascais, but considering also across the bridge to the south. And so these two international schools are two options if you decide to relocate to that area. Then I have included these options that are the one available around the area of Porto. We have two in Porto City and then one in Braga. Braga is a smaller town as well, located less than an hour from Porto. And then, as you can see, there's quite a few options in the Algarve, which is in the south of Portugal as well. Traditionally, this is not surprising because traditionally the Algarve has always attracted a lot of people from abroad because it has a beautiful climate And so there's a lot of international schools. Unfortunately, since I am personally located in the area of Lisbon, I have less of a direct knowledge of this school in comparison to the knowledge that I have in the ones located around this area. But you can click on the links and see things in more detail if you are considering one of those locations. Then another, let's say, subcategory that I think it's worth mentioning, and it kind of belongs still under the umbrella of the international schools, are all the schools that belong to different third countries. So the German schools, the French schools, there's a couple of Spanish options as well. There's a Dutch school in the Algarve. So these are very good schools, generally speaking, that have the advantage that basically they provide a trilingual situation for your kids, because the children's main language is the one of the country. So in, let's say, the German school, the main language would be German, but they do obviously English, as all the other European countries, quite well, and they also do Portuguese because they are located in Portugal. So in this case, if language is something that you value a lot in the education, this may be a good option too. Or if, you know, a member of your family comes from one of these countries, that's one reason more. Okay, so what I have included in this slide is a link to a database of all the international schools in the country. So I tried to include the ones that are, let's say, the best known one, but there's a lot of other options too. And it's worth mentioning that obviously I only included the one located in the main cities, but there's also quite a few options in more remote locations. So if you are considering to move, let's say, to the area of Torres Vedras, which is an hour and a half north of Lisbon, there's an international school there too. So it's, you know, don't think that because you are aiming for a location that is not in one of the main cities, you won't be able to find an international school, because there's a few of them there too. And also, I think it's worth mentioning that under the umbrella of the Portuguese private schools, you also have quite a few new schools that have, like, let's say, more alternative, less mainstream orientation. So a big trend in the area of Cascais and Sintra at the moment is the one of forest schools. So schools that are a lot about the connection with nature and doing experience, particularly at a young age, outside. So that's something that, again, it's worth exploring if you're attracted to that type of teaching. And also there's quite a few Montessori, pure Montessori schools. I don't know how familiar you are with that approach, but if it's something that, you know, may be appealing to you, for sure, there's quite a few options there as well. Okay, what else do we have here? Here, what I provided you with two links that basically they contain some information about the rankings of the public schools, actually of the Portuguese schools, so both public and private. And you will see what I meant about the fact that not necessarily the Portuguese private schools have better academic results than the public one. It depends. Now, the limitation here is that it's not let's say, a super official and efficient system of rankings like in other countries. I know that in the US, there's much more information about this, but they have started doing it. I think in 2020, they didn't manage because of COVID. So the last one that I could find was 2019. But I think it gives you at least a good idea if you are considering a particular Portuguese school to see how it ranked a couple of years ago. It's still a bit of an indication. For sure, the websites are in Portuguese, unfortunately, but you know, these days, thanks to Google Translate, I'm sure that the message that you can find the information that you need. And then I have also included the last website, which is the one basically if you want to enroll your child in the Portuguese public system, this is the official website that you have to use. In terms of time frame, generally the enrollment period is around April of, let's say your child will start the year in September, and so in April you have to register him. So that's roughly the time frame. Then for sure, if you're moving in a different time of the year, I'm sure you can find a way to slot in, but if you can make it by the official enrollment day, that's probably easier. And then I think the second last link instead, it's a database that have all the Portuguese schools. So you can put your location and find the schools options there, which is very useful if you're, struggling in deciding between different locations. It may be a good way to compare options there. Okay, so that brings us to the last topic of this presentation, which is how to navigate the choice between choosing first a place to live and a school for your kids to attend. So what should we give priority to? And I think unfortunately, as many times in life, there's not like a fixed rule. I think one way to go about it is to obviously see if there's any fixed variable in the process. Like if you are coming to Portugal because of a job and that it's in Lisbon, that kind of already gives you an indication. Or if your priority is lifestyle, so you're coming to Portugal because you want to live close to the coast and having a certain lifestyle, then for sure that will be the main decisional factor in your in your choice. On the other hand, if it's a combination of things, I think one way that often is helpful is to select a few locations based on what you heard about the accommodation options, the lifestyle, and then adding the educational part as another variable in the process, so that it can count as one of the things to consider in your choice. Okay, so to conclude, I think it's fair to say that there's only limited information on actual rankings in Portugal. So it's hard if you are very keen on studying that side of things. It may be a bit difficult for you. The best way, in my opinion, when you narrow down some options, is to get in touch with people whose children are going to these schools, because the situations, they change very quickly. A teacher, the teacher may move schools, the headmaster may change, and then changes the whole feeling of the school. So I think to have a relevant and most updated information, the safest way is to try and connect with other parents. And thank God we have Facebook these days, which for at least our generation of parents seems to be still quite used. There's a lot of groups that you can join, parents or expat parents or foreigners in the Lisbon region or in the Algarve. So these type of groups are, in my opinion, very valuable in terms of what information you can get, direct information. Then I think it's important also, obviously depending on the age of your child, but to involve them in this decision and see what they feel comfortable with, and how for sure it's difficult for them even sometimes to imagine, but I think sometimes giving them the feeling that they are part of the decision make things easier in the adjustment process as well. And also I think it's fair to say that when we choose things, it's obviously important to have a long-term goal, but being mindful also of the present and the consequence that this will have on your daily life, on your family, on your child development and all of that. So to have both views make sense, to combine the two when deciding. And finally, also, I see a lot of families and parents struggling hard with this decision. And ultimately, I think that there's not necessarily one perfect school, and each school has some pros and cons. So it's not a huge deal after all. I think sometimes we tend to make it a bigger deal. So do your research by any means and decide which way to go. But then I think it's also important to keep it a bit lighter and not to stress too much about it. So I think that brings me to the end of the presentation. So thank you so much for your time. And obviously, if you have any more specific question that I can answer, I'm more than happy to do so.
Well, thank you so much, Marta. This is very informative.
My pleasure. Hang on. Let me stop share. Here we go.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can someone hear me? Yes. Hello.
Sorry. Yes, I can hear you, but not super well.
What about now?
Yes, I think it's better now.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Marta. My name is Adam, and apologies that I'm a few minutes later for the conference, but gladly I still make it. I have some few questions about the education, about the application to the university for the kids.
Yes, sir. You were saying something about the application, but I don't know if Harry, you can hear better. I'm having trouble hearing.
He's asking the application for the college, I think.
Exactly. Yes, I'm trying to say. So, what is the major differences between Portuguese curriculum setup to apply the university from the UK, the US, the European Union, and the international curriculum setup? So, is there any difference when you're trying to apply the university, or do you need to take extra exams or something like this?
Okay, so obviously, I am not an educational expert, so I'm going to give you a general answer because I'm not well informed about every country. But I can tell you, generally speaking, that the Portuguese curriculum is quite even more developed than the international one. For instance, in some subjects like maths, I know that is more advanced. So generally speaking, if you are opting for Portuguese school with a Portuguese curriculum, you will not have a lot of troubles accessing other universities in Europe, given that you have the language obstacle, obviously. Now, in terms of the US system, and I think the British system as well, you may have more troubles in the sense that a lot of them require you, like if you graduated from with an IB, an international baccalaureate diploma, it's direct that you can enter those universities. There's no question about. If you are sometimes coming from different systems, in this case, the Portuguese one, they may have to look in more details of how the curriculum covered certain areas depending on the universities and on the field. So a lot of people feel more comfortable going for the international option because there's no question asked there. You have your diploma and you can access whatever internet, particularly in the English system. But that is not to say that if you opted for Portuguese one, you will have necessarily to do extra studies. It really depends then on the actual subject.
Okay, I see. Because if let's say economical-wise, if the chance for Portuguese graduates to enter the university outside of Portugal is as same as the international diploma. So yeah, I think it's economically-wise, it's smarter to just go to public school because you have less investment. So that's what I'm trying to compare with.
Yeah. And I think also on the other hand, there's one part of it, like you said, the curriculum, and then you have also the part of the language. Like a lot of, but it's not a big deal, but a lot of universities in the UK or in the US, if you didn't do your education in English, they will need you to sit an exam, like a language proficiency exam, which again, it's not a big deal at all. But most likely, if you attended a Portuguese education, then you will have to sit that exam because you're not coming from an education in English. So that's another, apart from a curriculum, there's also the language factor to consider.
Yes, I totally agree with on that. I really appreciate your answer. And I really appreciate.
You're welcome.
Yes. Yes, thank you. And I really appreciate Mr. Harry give this chance to share the useful information to us. Thank you.
Well, thank you so far. Thank you. Any questions?
I have one more. Thank you for the presentation. Can you hear me well?
Yeah. Hello, hi.
Yes, I see that you listed some top-rated school, well-known international school, and I just wanted to know whether you know the school called the Calusi American International School of Lisbon, and what is your opinion of it? It claims that is the only school recognized by the Department of Education in the U.S.
In the U.S. Yeah, obviously, I don't know exactly if that claim is correct, but I would say I imagine it being the case because it's the only one out of the different schools here in the area of Lisbon that really is an American school, so that fully follows the US curriculum. So about that claim, it makes sense for me, but obviously I investigated, in a very systematic way. On the other hand, in terms of feedback, I can tell you that I know a few people whose kids go there, and I also know a couple of teachers of the school, past teachers. And for what I heard, everybody seems to be quite satisfied. So I didn't hear any concerning stories or anybody not being satisfied with the level of education and of facilities and everything offered in the school. So the feedback I have about that one is that it's quite good. And if you're moving from the US, it may be quite a good option, even in terms of method of teaching and of studying and education, because your children may be used to that already from the US.
Yeah, let me make some comments.
Thank you so much.
I didn't know if you want to be in a hurry.
It's a really nice school. It's everything. It's better than the US school, I think. My kids went to the private one of the private schools in our system, but it's different. People are so nice, and the teachers greeting you from the car, picking up everything, taking care of the house, and also the campus is the overseas was really old, everything, and the teachers so caring. You have I think 40% fact of the US, and we have a majority of the city so it's really nice. It's for the for the courses and that. It's really great. Safe part of the community feeling so that I feel so very confident, even though the flip was not nice and overall and it's quite only process here if you come from.
Your question, Carmen?
Oh yeah, thank you so much, Henry. You were saying that you're comparing the public school in Portugal, right? You feel that the teachers are nice. You're talking about the private school or the public school?
Yeah, the international school comparing with the private school in it's a very good positive attitude for the faculty teachers. It's not
Thank you so much for your answer. That's all from me.
Okay, I was just, expanding a little bit on the facilities side of things, because it's fair to say that maybe if you're coming from the US, where generally, private schools, they have very good modern facilities, in Portugal, even very good schools, they are maybe a little bit old style in the way of like the school is the facilities, not the teaching, but the facilities, they may be in a smaller place or a little bit old. So maybe the impression is the first impression maybe a bit different, like, oh my god, it's not as modern and as sleek as things back home. But I guess, as Harry was saying, then the quality of the teaching and of the people is actually quite good. So that's a bit of a cultural adjustment maybe required.
Yeah, student-teacher ratio is really good.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. I'm sorry to bother, but I still have one question about the language learning.
Yeah.
So do you think it is to go into Portuguese schools that master the language in 100% level so that the kid can take the examination to the entrance of the university? Do you think it is possible? And like, if it is possible, how long time do you think the kid needs that are gonna bring him up or her up to this kind of level?
So I'm not too sure. You meant like getting proficient if they go to a Portuguese school in Portuguese or in English?
Yes.
Like going to Portuguese school and getting proficient and advancing to Portuguese university?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Look, honestly, my experience and not just in Portugal, in any other country, is that if a child attends a school in a language, no matter if that language is not spoken at home, it will end up being his first language, because the language of the peers is the one that counts the most in a child development, and the schooling and the peers. So in this case, maybe it's not going to happen in 1 year, so you need to have at least maybe 2 or 3 years. But I'm fairly confident that a child attending Portuguese school will become a native speaker of Portuguese. So I don't see any challenge for the child, even then, considering higher education in Portuguese. If anything, maybe it's a little bit harder for the parents who want to be, if they want to be involved in the education, helping out with the homework and all of that, maybe the challenge. But on the other hand, you're giving one extra language to your child, so that's pretty cool. So I wouldn't be concerned about them becoming proficient in the language. For sure, it takes, and also a lot of the schools, they offer like Portuguese for foreigners to start with. So the first few months they take out the child and they do some extra Portuguese to get them up and running with the Portuguese.
Thank you very much. I think it's a really fair answer. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I think it's if there's not, I don't know, Harry, if you wanted to add anything.
No, I think that's it. Thank you so much for your time. It's really very
Thank you. Nice to talk with everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.